Hello and welcome to this album review. People have asked me, when are you going to do another album review? So today I'm doing Winds of Change 1982, released in October 1982 by Jefferson Starship. Hey, I did some Fleetwood Mac reviews. Okay, October 4th, 1982, this album was released, recorded in San Francisco at the Automat. But those kept getting muted no matter what I tried. I mean, that band is the most aggressive group I've ever seen for, like, in my opinion, doing ridiculous things to protect things that don't need to be protected, when actually these kind of videos are simply commentary upon the album. And they could only help promote the group. So we'll open this up to chat if anybody's interested. I doubt they would be, but they may be. All right, so this band was started really way back in 1965 in its first iteration, and their original female lead singer, resigned after about a year because she was married, she had a child, and she didn't think the rock and roll lifestyle was appropriate for raising a baby. That was Signe Tolley Anderson. So then there was another San Francisco Bay Area singer, Grace Slick. Grace Slick had that name by virtue of her marriage to Jerry Slick. She was known, and so they said, okay, because they had already had a record contract with RCA Records, and they had one album released already with the original singer, and they said, okay, they hired her, and turned out that was a very smart move, because the band released a second album, and they became very popular for a good while, and eventually some of the early members left over mainly differences over musical direction, and they decided to it was a transition period between 1970 and 74, and they eventually emerged as a reconstituted group known as Jefferson Starship. Mainly that was, partly that was due to copyright or trademark reasons. Some of the original members had some rights to that name. All right, so 74, the Jefferson Starship comes out, and they produce a string of albums. Now this band, it's all under the Jefferson Airplane umbrella. I talked about that in previous videos. I need to oil this chair. Whether it's Airplane, Grace Slick solo albums, Paul Kantner solo albums, the KBC band. Later on, when they dropped the Jefferson part of the name due to another lawsuit, a threatened lawsuit, when Paul Kantner had quit. That's another story. It was still, even Starship is considered under the umbrella of Jefferson Airplane, and there's evidence to back that up, especially the album, or the album compilation Flight Log from 1977, which includes all the solo albums, Starship songs, and Jefferson Airplane songs, as though it's a single group. So there's much evidence to that effect. All right, anyway, so to set this album up, and I do need to get Modern Times, but they didn't have it at Walmart. They had a while back, they had a, oh, HQ Video says, how's the storm? Oh, it's very mild. It never did develop into much. Except I understand some people got flooded, but we get that in Louisiana just with regular rain, so that's not too remarkable. Okay, so this band from 1966, I'm sorry, 67 to 87, every album was a gold record at a minimum. Now apparently After Bathing at Baxter's did not reach gold status, okay? But besides that album from 68 to 87, every album was gold. At a minimum, some were platinum, multi-platinum. Red Octopus, Knee Deep in the Hoopla. Earth was a platinum album. Spitfire was a platinum album. And then they had gold albums, and their concert tours were successful. They didn't do a whole lot of them, as much as some of the members had wanted. But like I was watching an interview with Bill Graham, their old promoter, who was killed, unfortunately, in a helicopter accident nearly 30 years ago. He said, he was talking about booking acts and doing concert tours. He said, well, of course, the Grateful Dead and Jefferson, Starship, they always sell out. So we don't have to worry about them. They just like a reliable act. And then he was talking about other groups that may be more challenging, whatever. He was one of the big time promoters. He actually came from Germany and France in the 1940s, escaped the very negative events of World War II. Bill Graham, not his real name, his adopted name. He was a Jewish immigrant. Okay, but anyway, so they were known, they were not at Fleetwood Mac level, but who is, right? They're not going to sell 40, they're not going to make an album that's 40 times platinum. Who else does that? You know, that's kind of an unusual event. But RCA liked this group because they were reliable, they were profitable. They put an album out, it would go at a minimum gold, so it was guaranteed money, okay? Grace Slick had gotten kicked out of the group for about 2.5 years after a drunken episode in Germany in 1978. She had a tendency to drink, and I saw an interview on the David Letterman show. He said, you were a pretty good drinker for a while, huh? She said, no, I was not a pretty good drinker. If I had been a good drinker, I'd still be drinking. I was a bad drinker. In other words, if she drank, watch out, because it's going to get bad. And apparently she could smoke marijuana or take LSD and use other drugs, and there wasn't a whole lot of negative reaction. And you may not even notice that she was on the stuff, but if she drank liquor, boy, you just had to clear the room. It was going to be big problems. So she had a little episode, yeah, a major episode in Hamburg, Germany in 1978, and they told her, you're out. Go get some kind of help. So she did. You know, it kind of stuck for a while, and then she relapsed back in the 90s and had to go get some more help. And so apparently she's off the booze today. She's nearly 80 years old. She better stay off the booze. Okay. I mean, these people are all old, right? This is a band that had their first album 51 years ago. All right. Some of the members are dead. They've passed away. All right. She made 2 solo albums, and they were fairly successful, not hugely successful, but even she admitted she was too lazy to promote the albums. You know, like, she's not going to go on tour if she has to manage it. That's why she always relied on her former boyfriend of 6-7 years, Paul Kantner. 6 years, I guess they were together, they had a child, because she said he would manage everything. You know, he was a dictator. You know, he had to have everything his way. He demanded total submission to his musical ideas. Oh, well, she was willing to go along with that because, after all, she didn't have to do anything. Just show up, sing. Let him handle all the business end of it. All right. Some of that management style did lead to conflict, increasingly large conflict in 1983-84, causing him to split away from the group. But he did reconstitute the group at a further point, and they do continue to tour today. Not with him. He died in January 2016. But some of the former members are still on tour. They came to Louisiana in March. I did not go because it was football season. I'm sorry, in October last year. I did not go because it was football season. I wasn't about to miss these big games to go see an old band sing a bunch of old songs. All right. Especially when the concert was 3 hours away. If they come to New Orleans, I may go see them. I doubt it. But anyway, let's just pretend it's 1982. We can look at a group when they're still relatively young and not just like so many bands today, a tribute band of themselves. All right, so they came back. She got together with a group in 1981, back together, and worked a little bit on the album Modern Times. and sang a duet with Mickey Thomas, their new lead singer. The original male singer, Marty Balin, had quit. He quit twice. He's come back off and on over the years working with them. He just wasn't big into touring and all of that. He had a lot of money anyway. He didn't need a job. And it just didn't appeal to him to constantly be in a group. So they hired Mickey Thomas from another band, and they were successful with him. And he was a good tenor. He had a good tenor voice. So they made one album with him in 1979. Freedom at Point Zero was a gold record. I remember that in the record store. I didn't know anything about the group. It just was an interesting album cover with a kid throwing some kind of flying saucer on the deck of an aircraft carrier. And then they made Modern Times in 1981. Grace Slick came back and did a song, Stranger, which was an interesting song. I wish I had set it up to play a little bit of it, but it's an interesting song. Modern rock. Now, some of the criticism the group got was that they changed their sound. People said, you changed your sound. Now, Paul Kantner took exception to that and said, hey, you know what? We're not going to be stuck in 1967, okay? In the 60s, we sounded like a 60s group. Hold on a second. In the 70s, they sounded like a 70s group. In the 80s, we're going to sound like an 80s group because they were into music, okay? Now, people don't maybe understand that. They were music fans, so they were up with what was happening at the time. Him, Grace Slick, his former girlfriend, whatever. So they didn't really have a lot of interest in singing a bunch of old styles. Okay, so he said, you know, hell, if we don't change our style, people say we're stuck in a rut. But then if we update the sound, people say, oh, you changed your sound. I'll see if I can get this to play. A little lag here. Maybe coming through on the audio, I don't know. Okay. Okay, so you know that sound. That sounds like music from 1981. We all know, well, those of us that are old enough to remember, we know what music sounded like in 1981, okay? So it's just that album-oriented rock. I don't know how to describe it. Guitar. Now this has a strong bass line. That was sort of their thing with Pete Sears and sometimes David Freiberg, the bass line, okay? And then, but this is a duet. They were big into duets. Grace Slick and Mickey Kantner, who had similar voices. You know, he had a tenor voice. She had what they call a mezzo-soprano voice. So their voices complemented each other. So you can hear this little bit right here. And then we'll go on to this album. But this kind of led into this 1982 album.
Stranger calling, eyes that look like mine. Said you know I've called before, but it's very nice will be shown. Come on, me through the unknown. Familiar stranger, should I know your name?
Okay, so that's Stranger, and that was a popular song. Back at the time, and so we'll look at this album, Winds of Change, see if we can get this chat going up again. I don't know if it's functioning. My Hangout is functioning. All right. Oh well. So Winds of Change, interesting album. Here's the LP. This is a first printing here. Grunt Records, which is not a real company. It's RCA actually, but Winds of Change. See. So. All right, good. I see we got this reset here. All right, so here's the opening song. Interesting song. And Craig Trequiso's guitar, he's got that sort of soaring guitar sound. That was very popular in the early 80s, late 70s, early 80s. None of the music back then was particularly heavy. And that's another topic. It's kind of hard to describe. It's Van Halen exemplified that sound. Hard driving, but not heavy. You want heavy? Go listen to Paranoid 1970. Or Volume 4, Black Sabbath Volume 4. Then you'll get heavy. Even that one's, although I shouldn't have mentioned Volume 4 because that's when they were kind of getting away from heavy, so scratch that. That's more of a progressive sound. All right, so here's a little bit of Winds of Change.
Walk softly through the desert sand, careful where you tread. Underfoot are the visions lost, sleeping not yet dead. When fire this is on the ground, can you hear the sound?
Now with this song, you know, you hear that thumping bass. Now it was this guy, Pete Sears, and you can look at their videos way back to the mid 70s. He just had this thumping bass, this bottom that kept the music moving along. And then they had their new drummer here. One of their early drummers who had been with them in the 70s got in a bad car wreck, so he couldn't perform. It had Ansley Dunbar for the 81 album, 79 and 81 album, I believe, and he did very well. And but Donnie Baldwin came in, and he was with them throughout the 80s after this, and he's back with them today touring, Donnie Baldwin. And so his percussion is very solid. But their songs, if you'll notice throughout this little album review, will go on for a little while longer, they build. They tend to start slow, and then they build, and it's all dramatic, and they do a lot of ensemble singing. I've talked about that before. Appeals to some people, other people hate it. And you've got Grace Slick writing songs, Pete Sears and his wife Jeanette Sears writing songs, Paul Kantner writing his like space age type psychodrama songs, and they had outside writers too, who they brought in to write hit songs because they always said they didn't have an ear for hits. Marty Balin did, but he quit the group in 1978, so it wasn't going to do them much good. So they did hire some friends of theirs that were songwriters that could write a hit. Okay, so Winds of Change, and I'll play a little bit more of it, and we'll go to the next selection. But this is one that has the dramatic buildup, you know, and then it kind of unleashes.
You got your life planned carefully, but you left out one detail. The hidden hand is just one round.
So that's the opening salvo on the albums. Pretty dramatic, you know. And that guitar work in the 80s, early 80s, I kind of describe it, it's metallic, but it's like foil. You know what I mean? It's not heavy metal, it's foil. It's very metallic, though. You can listen to a lot of Van Halen albums, and it's an appealing sound to me. It deteriorated in the mid 80s, however, when things started to get more into the like false metal. I don't know why people called it heavy metal back then. I never could understand that. I used to say, this is not heavy metal, it's light metal. And I got into arguments with people in high school. I said, I don't know what this stuff's supposed to be, but it's not heavy metal. Metallica sort of took up the torch, you know, took up the relay baton or the torch, carried the torch in the mid 80s. I know it's speed metal and I know about all that, but they sort of kind of kept momentum going for whatever chance there was with heavy metal. Okay, so here's Keep On Dreaming.
And you could wish that dreams would someday would come true. When I slay dragons and with the hands of the family slave, keep on dreaming of the way it could be. In a fairy tale, keep on dreaming with a magic lady. In the way it could be. In a make-believe world. Magic kind of love. Magic kind of love. Keep on.
And I think you see what I mean about that. I can't describe it, that aluminum foil sound for the guitar. It's a good sound, but it's a little bit difficult to describe. Now, the next song is Be My Lady. It was a minor hit in the 80s. You mostly heard this on, this music was not necessarily a good fit for top 40 radio, but it did very well on album-oriented rock. Now, when they came out with their Knee Deep in the Hoopla in 1985, that was like perfect for mid-80s pop music, and they did very well with that, with 3 #1 hits. But that's another story. Let's look at Be My Lady. Some of you remember this. Some of you remember this song here. And you get that distinctive guitar under and the bass underneath, but you'll recognize this, probably these riffs here.
Just look at you, and I'm hypnotized, like I'm drowning down. Right in your eyes, you are beautiful. That's the matter, and I want you more than anything. And I cannot sleep, and I lost my sight. All my senses gone, lost in you tonight, and I want your love. Be my lady, be my lady, be
All right, so Be My Lady, you probably know that song. The video's nice. It's a cute video. It's all about their different girlfriends, and they're going around hugging and kissing their girlfriends on the set. And this music style is similar in some ways to, say, if you listen to Blue Oyster Cult's 1981 album. What's the name of that album? Fire of Unknown Origin. But of course, the theme is different. This theme of this album is mostly lighthearted, kind of nice, except for the Paul Kantner songs, which are always obscure, kind of strange. But you know, Blue Oyster Cult, the album Fire of Unknown Origin, has similar style of a similar 1981 style of music, 81, 82 style, but of course their theme is much more ominous because their whole career of evil, right? Their whole career was built on some kind of story arc about a secret society and a curse of a hidden mirror, and this whole exploration down into Yucatan Peninsula to find some kind of secret riddle to usher in some new age from when the old gods return or whatever. So they're a strange item, but the style of music, if you can get past the lyrics, are similar. But let's look at I Will Stay, and you'll recognize this type of music. We'll talk about it for a moment and go on to the next song.
You should know, darling, I love you so. All the nights I just try to dance through your eyes, just a smile for me.
All right, so you know what I'm saying. The power ballad. What exemplified the 1980s more than power ballads? Well, there's a few other things, but this is one of the big things from the 80s. Beefy, sort of condensed, a beefy condensed sound, or I should say a dense sound, power ballad, right? High school dance, close dancing, slow dancing, power ballad, definitely targeting, I guess, teenage girls or whatever, but it was a very popular. Now, you might listen to it today and want to stick your finger down your throat because you just hate that stuff, that style. But in 1982 to 87, no one was laughing. This was like a major thing from all the big groups. You know, they wanted to have these power ballads. We're not going to go talk about every group, but it was a big thing. Okay, so the next selection on the album, is Out of Control. Well, this is a much different type song here. We can get the damn thing to work. Okay. You know, Internet Explorer is not necessarily ideal for all applications. This was sort of a crazy song, sort of their comedy song, their kooky song on the album. Wasn't meant to be taken seriously. No one took it seriously. Some people say that's silly. Well, it's meant to be silly. It's a kind of a song that does better in concert, where they can really act crazy and Grace Slick and collapse on the stage.
I tried to warn you. I tried to warn you.
Like I said, Grace Slick can collapse on stage after the concert. After the song, I mean, and then get up laughing, you know, just like silliness. Like,
warn you. I tried to warn you. It's out of control. It's out of control. It's out of control. It's out of I like to be outside every day. Happens outside, all the boys are outside, all the fun is outside. I have no mental problems. I didn't let anybody tell you. It's out of control. Yes, it's out of control.
I saw an interview where they asked her about the song, and she said, well, that song does sort of describe the group. We are kind of, our lifestyles are sort of like the song, a little crazy. And she said just like a whole career of craziness, people acting out of control and getting in all kind of trouble. You know, they wore stylish clothes. They always buying these designer clothes. In the early 70s, designer hippie clothes, you know, and in the mid 70s, you know, the designer denim with the leather, you know, all expensive clothes. And in the 80s, once again, the 80s look like punk influence, but not in any way really related to that music style. Yeah, they drove nice cars and they dressed very stylishly, but they acted crazy in a lot of ways, like a true rock and roll, as the song says, out of control. And there's a little mid part in the song where it goes and has a little bridge part. You might find that interesting. I do. Let's see if we can get to that real fast.
It's not like they told me it was going to be, and the only light is from the fire of the burning books. He said, she said, wait, what? He said, she said, well, you better do it. He said, she said, I warn you, I tried to warn you. He World's on fire, toys on fire, everybody everywhere looking for desire. There goes Mary, there goes Sue. I tried to warn you, I tried to warn you. Out of control.
Yeah, there's a little bridge part I skipped over it accidentally. It's talking about Grace Slick talking mysteriously. I'm a specialist in darkness. Some people might read into that and say, they were involved in black magic. No, mostly they were just involved in silliness and trying to make the song mysterious and goofy. Can't Find Love is another one of those power ballads. It was a minor hit, I guess. Hear a little bit of it. That's not it. It's a commercial. Okay, so very shortly we'll have Can't Find Love, who was written by the whole group, basically. Grace Slick, Mickey Thomas, Craig Chaquiso. The music was written by Craig Chaquiso. Okay, so you know what I'm talking about? It's a slow build, boop, 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 and then it builds, and then boom, the song kicks in, and that's their style. That's the band's style. Now, Grace Slick said, I don't really like that kind of music. I've seen numerous interviews. She said, I don't like love songs. Okay, they're boring to me. They're always on the radio. This one loves this one. I can't get along. Let's try to make up. I love you, baby. And all that. She said, that's fine. That's where the money is. Okay, she loves making money. So, okay, fine. That's the hits. But she said, I don't like that kind of music. She liked the more outlandish stuff, the weird stuff. And her songs, when you read her, listen to her songs, they're more like ominous in a way, like Mistreat Her from 1981, which was performed on their tour a few times, their tours. That was from her solo album, but Mistreat Her, Mistreat Her, Mistreat Her, Mistreat Her, about a rich, bitchy woman who is like ruthless and gets any man she wants because she's got money and a bad attitude. So this next song, Black Widow, is similar. It's about a woman who entices men to come into her inner sanctum, whatever, using sex as a weapon, and then she just takes them for everything they're worth. You know what I mean? Sort of like Ginger in Casino. You're getting set up. She's going to take you apart. She's going to use this lure to break you apart, and that's what Black Widow is about. Not a song that's going to be a hit on the radio, but a song that probably be one of the more interesting ones from the album and was performed on tour. So let's look at this photo.
She had black around legs and she was twice the size. And when he saw her, everything was a hypnotized. She just lying there on stretched out on a silky bed. She got sheets like a neck made out of silver thread. He said, I'm coming at you, baby. Look out when the boat sees red. He just had to do it to jump right into her web. Well, she shake those long legs till he's weak in the knees. He said, baby, you're the best thing I've ever seen. Take my love, you find love in the morning. Take my love, and I'll carry you away. Take my love, you can have it if you want. Take my love, take my love.
So you get the theme there. Slow build once again, and then it's all about her ripping the guy apart. Okay, I'll do a follow-up at the end on the whole album. Now, the next song is Paul Kantner. It's probably in my opinion, the best song on the album. Either that or When's the Change, I guess. But this is an interesting song. I don't know what he's getting at on the song. It's almost like he had escaped from some kind of terrible tragedy. I know he had brain aneurysm in 1980, nearly died. He'd almost gotten killed in a motorcycle wreck in 1961. That's why he always had his head covered. You know, if you ever notice, he's got his hair down above his forehead or a sweatband, because he had literally like a hole in his skull, which is pretty unpleasant to look at. And I guess he knew people didn't want to see this. So that's why he's got that. So this song, I Came Back from the Jaws of the Dragon, seems to kind of like talk about his escape from close brushes with death or bad experiences. But it's an interesting song, and much like a lot of their work, especially Kantner's work, it has different pieces to it. His songs have pieces. They're like little adventures, and they go through this and then that point and this point. And maybe the casual listener wouldn't like that kind of stuff, but I love it, you know. So let's check it out a little bit. I came back from the jaws of the dragon.
It won't be the last time. I came back on again. I came back.
Okay, so it starts off with this rollicking, you know, keyboards and various guitars with the sort of like almost like a harp sound. And he's talking about how he came back from the jaws of the dragon. Then they're going to kick in with Mickey Thomas, who talks about the lyrics about could have been assassinated. And then at the end of the song, it's going to go into this wild, like a wild melange, like a swirling sound. It's a very interesting song. So we'll listen a little bit more, and then we'll go to the last song, and then a bonus song, which was supposed to be on the album, but it was taken off the album. And I think because it was a little too strange of a song, and they decided it would fit better on a later album from 1983.
Would assassinate me for abusing my body privilege. Can't spend the time on the hole. Can't spend the time on the hole. Get your corner and forget about the hole. Forget how you might call it. Forget how you might call it.
Okay, so they're talking about holes, spinning home on the holes. I don't know if they were referencing the book Holes, you know, later became a movie Holes. I know they were, he and Grace Slick were big into reading all these novels, and a lot of their songs come from these science fiction or strange novels. So people that are into like fiction, they might know more about this song than me. I read the lyrics, so I couldn't figure them out. But then we'll go to a later part of the song, and then we'll wrap this up. Now, if you notice that song, at the end it transitions almost into a different song, and you hear wolves in the background, which is almost like an homage or a reference back to a song from 9 years previous. Oh, excuse me, 12 years previous, a song called When I Was Young, I Ran with the Wolf Pack, which is a very interesting song. Now the last song is Quit Wasting Time. And then we'll talk about the bonus song, which was not on this album, but was recorded for this album. This song is called Quit Wasting Time, coming up. All right. Let's go, move it. You'll find that this song is more of a standard type song. Gotta wait for this stinking ad. You know, everything's got ads, right? I need to do what Dr. Dave did and pay for the ad free, right? Let's see, any comments? No, that's okay. Whoops, made a little mistake there. Sorry about that. Hit the wrong button. I thought something was wrong. Well, okay, so we're screwed up a little bit. It'll be okay, people. Now, I don't know, you might say, this music's too standard. It's too corporate or whatever from the early 80s. I can understand that. I like listening to this album, though. It doesn't have any boring parts. There's a few slow songs, but they're not boring. It's got a lot of energy. It just moves along. And that's my attitude a lot of times. Let's go. Come on. Move it. Move it. You know what I mean? I don't want to hear some songs going to just drag. You say, I want something more challenging from the 80s. Well, you know, if you want something more challenging from 1982, maybe you should listen to Gary Newman's I, Assassin album. That'll be a much more challenging album. Or Soft Cell from 1982. What did they have? Let's see. Nonstop Erotic Cabaret, Nonstop Exotic Dancing, I believe it was 82, 81, 82. Then 83, they had Soul Inside. The Art of Falling Apart. Yeah, The Art of Falling Apart. Or you can listen to Art of Noise, Into Battle with the Art of Noise. That'd be a lot more challenging, you know, something like that. Or you can listen to The Blue Mask by Lou Reed. You know, I don't know how pleasant that is to listen to. But it's interesting. It's got a lot of character. Blue cheese, Limburger cheese has a lot of character, but many people don't enjoy it. But that's sort of like The Blue Mask. It's got a lot of character. I don't know if you would enjoy it. Okay, so let's go back to Quit Wasting Time. You say you're wasting time. Okay, and then we'll go to the last selection. Okay, so that's, you know, closes out with a nice, not a great song, nice song, 80s, corporate, rock, whatever. Okay, all right, I like it. It's not a song and album I dislike, okay? I like some more than others. I think it's a good album. It's not a great album. I'll give it 4 out of 5 stars. 4 out of 5 stars. An excellent album. I'm still looking to get Modern Times and Nuclear Furniture from Walmart. I missed the chance there because they had this like multi-pack you had to buy, and I already had one of the albums. I think they made a lot of excellent albums. Now, the last song that's not on the album but was supposed to be is a song called Circle of Fire. You're going to see why it wasn't on the album. It's a little strange. It starts off with odd horns, and you can see why they might maybe decide it was more appropriate to Planet Earth Rock and Roll Orchestra from Paul Kantner, which for all intents and purposes is a Jefferson Starship album with all the members on it. But RCA Records might have said, look, that's a little too off track for what you have been doing lately. It might confuse the fans. How about you put it out as a solo album? Fine. He didn't really do that well. But probably it's a much more profoundly, a more profound album, but maybe not as listenable. To me, I think it's a great album. It's very deep. It's sort of like the sequel to Blows Against the Empire from 1970, but it's not going to be everybody's cup of tea. But let's look at Circle of Fire, and then we'll shut this down.
I'm gonna touch the stars. Won't you come, go with me? Turning into light, suspended in intensity. In the night, where silence reigns. Over there, the frontier's end, and borders are gone. I'm in a circle of fire. A circle of fire. Inside the circle of fire. In the best years of our lives. Circle of fire.
Now, in my opinion, the song should have been on the album. It would have been a great closing song. I don't know if there was some time. Maybe it was more of a situation of time. It's a great song, and it closes out, has wonderful piano, keyboard sections. Hey, well, you know, I'm not anybody to make those decisions, but we'll close that out, and then we'll finish this up, and maybe if anybody has any interest to comment, post live production. All right, so that's that. Solid album, a pretty heavy sound in context of the time. Pretty heavy sound, solid, hard charging rock album. And I like hard charging rock albums. I like albums with a lot of power, and this album has power. And I could go through a whole video, albums that have power versus albums that lack power. And that will open a can of worms, and it would make some people very angry. But I wouldn't retract it. I would stand by it. So thank you for joining me in this album review. Be curious to see what you think about this album. What's the next album review? I don't know what is the next one, and if there ever will be one, but we'll see. But here's one I bought. I'm glad I got it. I like it a lot. And that's the end of this video production.